Hey everyone, Alan with the Magic Minute here, where we take tricks and turn them into real magic. Chances are, if you're watching this video, it's because you came over from Scam Nation's Acrobatic Aces video. I have a couple of extra thoughts that I want to share with you. I'm going to do it right now. The first thing I want to talk about is the real strength of the Acrobatic Aces routine. If you've ever performed a color change for your audiences before, you know what kind of impact it has. People love them, they eat them up. My wife of 10 years still loves the color changes, and it's her favorite thing that I do. Though it doesn't matter how much more complicated or amazing magic I think I'm doing, she still loves the color changes. The Acrobatic Aces is kind of like doing 4 color changes at the same time. At least that's the perception of the audience. So think about that. This is a very, very powerful visual trick, and it's way better than doing like just mindless color change after mindless color change with no motivation. This is a fabulous trick if you're looking for something visual. So whenever I showed this effect to John, I had him pull out all 4 aces. But you don't have to do that. If you have an audience of 4 people, this is a great way to get every single person in your group involved at the same time. Have each of them pull out an ace. You can even make some kind of patter about, well, this is testing to see how lucky you guys are, whoever gets the high card, whatever. There's a lot of different ways you can go with it, but if you can get all the props out of your hands and into your audience's hands, it's way better and it gets everyone involved. So often it's that, the magician pulls up a volunteer, then they interact with the volunteer, and the rest of the audience is just there to spectate. But if you can get every single person involved at the same time, that's the best thing you could possibly do. So don't be afraid to involve multiple spectators. Something that happened in the performance was whenever John picked the first card, he turned it face up and then continued suit with all the other ones. That's on me. I should have scripted that better or approached that in a way that made it so that he didn't feel like he needed to turn over the cards. I think he thought it was more of a pick a card, look at the card, remember the card. Whenever I just want him to quickly pull out 4 random cards without looking at them, and I could have just said that. So Brian's right that it is better theatrically to have that push and pull, the dynamic of, okay, there's maybe, am I pulling out the aces right now? I don't know. And you turn them over and you get that, and then you go, no, wait, you did it. And then poof, you get the magic. That's got a better dramatic tension. It's much more theatrical. But that didn't happen, and it's okay. You saw how I just kind of went with it. There are all kinds of things that are going to happen in a show that you can never predict. You can try to plan to death what's going to happen, and as soon as you show up for the show and you're like, yeah, I got this, I know every kind of out that there possibly is, your audience will surprise you and do something you could never have imagined they would do. So that's why you need to practice and know the effects so well that you don't even have to worry about it. If something like that happens, you can instantly switch gears and know how to fix it or roll with it or how to go into something else. Let's go ahead and talk about the actual mechanics. There's something in the video that I noticed was glaringly missing and something that I think is really important, and that has to do with the angles on this trick. We talked about, how to hold the cards in a block and all these things, but what we really didn't talk about was angles. It was fine because we were all standing, John and Brian and myself, we were all standing, or if we were all sitting, this would be no big deal. But let's say you're performing for an audience where they're seated and you're standing, like in a restaurant situation. You have to be careful whenever you have that 5-card block, you've got the 4 aces and then that 1 off card on top. From here, that looks fine, but if you look at it, you can see the edge of the cards. You're gonna see that's a chunk of 5 cards, not 1 card. So you have to be really careful about sight lines. If they are seated, you've got to tilt your hand forward so they're only seeing the flat of the card. You never want to flash that edge. That will ruin it right away and people will know something is amiss. I also wanted to talk about some jargon that Brian used on the channel. That's the idea of running when you're not being chased. Now, this idea is attributed to Al Baker, who is just a colossus of the magic world. He has a pillar of how we do magic today. Without his work, the magic landscape would be very different. He had this term called running when not being chased. It was the idea of excusing your own guilt or the fear that someone was going to think you were guilty by over-explaining or over-proving that things are fair. If you look at liars, they tend to have much more detail about whatever's happening when they're recounting it than someone who's telling the truth, because they want such fine detail that they're above reproach and no one would question them. What that ends up having is the opposite effect. If you overprove or overstate things that are obvious and everyone can just see that don't need to be said, what you're doing is you're really showing guilt in the first place, and a perceptive audience will pick up on that right away and know that there's something fishy. If this is your first time on the Magic Minute, I really appreciate you coming to check out my channel. Consider giving me a thumbs up and a subscription if you're into this kind of content. I have a lot of really other great tutorials and other kind of content I think you might enjoy. Also, if you're coming from Scam Nation, I want to hear from you down in the comments down below. Sound off, let me know that you're here from there. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.